Hey guys, it's BiTWXan's with the Ichiban Gamer Club. And today I'm going to be doing my video on the top 5 movies, or my top 5 movies for 2017. Now, if you haven't seen my explanation video already, then just a quick brief here on our stipulation. That being, I could only choose movies that I have seen. So even if a movie is, in your opinion, much better than my picks, if I haven't seen it, well, it kind of can't be helped. With that being said, on to my number 5 pick for top movies of 2017. At number 5, I'm going to be picking Colossal, starring Anne Hathaway, Jason Sudeikis, and directed by Nacho Vigalondo. Colossal, which came in with a Rotten Tomato score of 80% by critics, kind of lower on the scale with viewers. Movie wasn't a big budget AAA movie. I mean, this wasn't, as far as I know, it wasn't really heavily promoted or anything like that, and it really went unnoticed except for a few people who were able to catch this movie. I myself didn't even watch this movie till much later on in the year, and it kind of took me by surprise at how good it was. The way the story shifts from this kind of rom-com style of movie about a girl who's down on her luck by getting dumped by her boyfriend, and she gets kicked out of her apartment. She ends up moving back home, or her hometown, to start over. Meets up with his old friend who used to have a crush on her. Then the movie takes this dramatic shift where there's this all of a sudden there's an unexplained kaiju attack in South Korea, and you're just wondering where the hell this movie's kind of going. The trailers, sadly, if you've seen them, kind of spoil one of the big twists, which is it turns out Hathaway is somehow controlling the kaiju, which is kind of never really explained in the movie. I mean, the process is explained, but the reason why she did it is just kind of really ambiguous. It's movie magic kind of a thing. And it's one of those movie things that you have to suspend disbelief for. But I personally don't think it takes you out of the movie in any way. It's kind of like one of those kickbacks, one of those throwbacks to the old school movies where stuff happens just because, Where I think the movie picks up, though, is the character twist in this movie. The way they develop and change throughout. Now, I don't want to go too deep into that because I feel like it'll spoil the movie, and I think it's probably one of the better parts of the movie. It's what makes it so much more greater, the way these characters not only interact with each other, but the way they change as the movie progresses, and where you think you see a character and you're like, okay, you know where this character is going, and then, or you know what kind of movie this is gonna be, and then it just completely turns itself on its head, and you're just like, wow, okay, that was much more different than I thought it was gonna be, and it did it for the better, I think. The themes this movie pushes on is also really good. At least what I picked up from it, in the sense of the sense of duty someone has when given a power that they didn't ask for, or if a person, or what a person is owed, if anything, just for doing what they perceive to be the right thing. Even the theme of not judging something right off the bat without realizing their true intentions. I think it's hit upon really heavily in this movie. I think this is something that it was done well, and I dig it. I think anyone who hasn't watched this movie will also be surprised by how entertained they will be and how good the movie actually is. Anne Hathaway and Jason Sudeikis, they really mesh well together as well, and both act their parts really well. Anne Hathaway, she's always been good in a lot of stuff that she does, so I knew she would bring it. Jason Sudeikis, you can kind of Jason Sudeikis, I'll give props to, because he does a really good job where you're just like, oh, okay, he's playing another Jason Sudeikis role, but then it turns out it's not really another Jason Sudeikis role. So that was pretty interesting, the way they messed with his character and stuff. All the other supporting characters really do a good job. I don't really have any complaints about anybody as far as acting wise. If you haven't seen this movie yet, then I would suggest checking out Colossal, and that's going to be my number 5 pick. At number 4, I'm going to be picking Baby Driver, starring Ansel Elgort, John Hamm, Jamie Foxx, and directed by Edgar Wright. Now, for Baby Driver, I believe even before this movie came out, people thought it would be a good movie. If not only just because Edgar Wright was behind it. But personally, I think the movie delivered in it being a good movie. And that the 93% Rotten Tomato score, I'm not the only one who thinks that. As far as depth of story within this movie, if you're looking for that kind of stuff, I don't think there is much here. But the way this movie was put together, all around, I think is what makes it such a great movie. The way the car chases were shot and cut, it makes it feel real, and it kind of has this old school Hollywood way of shooting it, and it gives it that gritty feeling, even though it's really like fashionably done, as opposed to the whole Fast and Furious series, which have been doing a lot of like CG and all this kind of like weird nonsense to it. Like the chase scenes don't have any like impact or weight to it, where in Baby Driver, the car chase scenes kind of feel more real and have more weight to them, if that makes any kind of sense. It's just kind of like a feeling you get when you watch those scenes, and you're like, yes, okay, like this is how it's done, like these scenes. The actors in each of their roles deliver strong performances. Even John Bernthal, like in his short little cameo, delivers in that kind of character. You kind of want to see more of what he's bringing to the table, but he's only in there for about maybe like 10 to 15 minutes, but pretty good stuff either way. But from John Hamm to Jamie Foxx and even the main lead, Ansel Elgort, they give the characters like kind of a fleshed out feel in the movie that, even though it doesn't delve too much into their backstories or into their life in any way, you kind of get a sense of like what kind of people they are just by how they act in their scenes. The dialogue, even though sometimes it's a bit cheesy, especially with Baby and Deborah, kind of it still blows it out the water. Like they have that whole fast talking delivery, which I like. The way that Edgar Wright does his movies and stuff like that, his dialogue, the way they pitch to each other and stuff like that, I'm a fan of that. So they still do a good job. And the tension for me is really real. As if you can feel it. It's like palpable whenever like Jamie Foxx's character is doing a scene with Baby. You get the sense that he's gonna like do something to the homeboy, like he's gonna just mess him up in some way. But where this movie excels, I think, and what raises its bar is the music and the way that the music is integrated into the movie. From having background soundtracks play into the scene of the movie, the selection of the music that's used is top notch and fits so well into this movie that you feel as if those songs were made specifically for the movie, even though they aren't. They're just a lot of like songs that were already made and kind of just taken for this movie itself, which goes to show you how good Edgar Wright at selecting sound for his movies is. Overall, Baby Driver is a fun, action-packed movie. Good characters, good actors, dialogue is good, music is the best. I think, like I said, the way it's integrated into the movie makes it that much more better. And I think it's a good watch for any time of the year or any time of the day. You can watch it during the daytime, you can watch it at night, you can watch it at the beginning of the year, middle of the year, summertime flick, wintertime flick. It just has that kind of feel to it. So, number 4 pick is Baby Driver. At number 3, we have Spider-Man Homecoming, starring Tom Holland, Michael Keaton, and Robert Downey Jr., directed by John Watts. Drawing a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes, this movie, I know, or I believe, made everyone feel a bit nervous when it was announced. Because not only was it the third reboot of an already kind of like drawn out Spider-Man franchise, but it was the first one that was done by Marvel, which is what we all kind of wanted for so long. It feels like we put a lot of our chips on this movie being as good as we thought it could be. Like we were putting it all on this movie. We were like, this is the company we want having it, Marvel. This is the character we want them to have, Spider-Man. If this goes bad, there was a sense of like there's no hope for Spider-Man then. You know what I'm saying? But I think we all let out a sigh of relief when we actually did see the movie and find out that yes, it is as good as we all knew it could be. This movie made the Spider-Man character feel fresh and different, which, like I said, considering how recent the other Spider-Man movies were, is no small task. Just goes to show how good and structured the MCU has their characters in, like, all set up. They know how to write for these characters, and they already have the structure in place in order to make a good movie. So it's kind of like, okay, what would Spider-Man say in this scene? let's put him in this situation and let's just write it out and we'll get it done. And it's the Marvel formula, and it worked for Spider-Man. It worked for this character. I think what also helped him out was having him appear in Civil War with a small cameo. I think that definitely did. I think that definitely did a lot, and it eased people's concerns about Spider-Man: Homecoming. Because I think putting him in there helped this movie out. Because once people saw him and they realized how he was, how the character was for him, how they're gonna write for him.
You have a metal arm? That is awesome, dude. You have the right to remain silent. Hey, buddy, I think you lost this.
How different he was from the previous Spider-Mans. They realized, yeah, this could work. This could work now. A lot of people were anticipating now Spider-Man: Homecoming. It went from like, I can't believe another one's being done, to yes, I can't wait to see this next one being done. Tom Holland himself, he does a wonderful job of capturing kind of the vulnerability of being an actual teenage Peter Parker, and the wit and like the bravado that Spider-Man is supposed to have in some scenes. He has a good mix there where I feel like the other Spider-Mans kind of encompassed one or the other. Like you have Tobey Maguire, who was okay at being a Peter Parker, but was a terrible Spider-Man actually. And then you have Andrew Garfield, who made a really good Spider-Man, but was kind of just bad at being a Peter Parker. He was kind of like too cool for school Peter Parker, and I don't think that actually worked. Tom Holland has the mix of both, where you can kind of see like, yes, he's a vulnerable teenager playing Peter Parker, but when he puts on the suit, that's his way to let all this stuff out. I think the job that John Watts and Marvel does at making Peter actually feel like what a teenager would be going through if they were given these powers in this day and age is great. It also feels like what a Peter Parker in this era would be like if, like, say the comic had come out at this time, as opposed to back in the 60s. The character isn't changed severely enough that we don't recognize him as being a Peter Parker, but he's just tweaked enough. I think he's tweaked enough. They tweaked him just good enough that it makes sense for this day and age. Also gonna give a shout out to like Michael Keaton, who also does a great job at playing the Vulture. A character who's, let's face it, probably a B or a C plus player in the Spider-Man universe. But Keaton adds some depth to him, making him have weight to the character. That's another thing I gotta touch upon. Like having that character, his character not being tied to Peter in some way is also a refreshing touch. The older movies always try to like make the villain of the movie personal in some way to Peter Parker. This one wasn't, at least not from the get-go. It was just a villain that Peter had to deal with, and I think that's what a lot of people were like. They had a good, it felt there was a refreshing feeling there, because it wasn't just, oh, okay, this is Peter's friend or his friend's father or his professor or anything like that. This was just a guy that was a small-time goon, and Peter had to deal with him. Spider-Man: Homecoming, overall, this is another fun, well-written Marvel movie. And I believe it's going to improve with the sequels. And I can't wait to see what else they do with this character going forward. At number 3 for 2017, Spider-Man: Homecoming. At number 2, we have Wonder Woman, drawing 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. Wonder Woman stars Gal Gadot, Chris Pine, and it was directed by Patty Jenkins. Now, Wonder Woman, I put this movie at number 2, not only for how good of a movie it is, but I think the impact it had, not only for female superheroes and the characters, which I think we all knew would sell, but what it did for the DCEU, as it kind of saved it for them this year. Being the one movie that is not only decent, but really damn good for a cinematic universe that has been struggling to find its place from its conception is not an easy task. This movie had kind of nothing going for it, at least for me, maybe. I don't know how anybody else saw it. Maybe it was a hit from the beginning for other people, but as far as I was concerned, this movie had nothing going for it. Yes, there were a ton of like females who were excited at the prospect of this movie, but I think a lot of people went into this movie maybe really hesitant and skeptical, from the casting of Gal Gadot, which brought a lot of like controversy with people saying, she was too skinny, she wasn't big enough to be a Wonder Woman. How is she gonna look like trying to fight and stuff like that? I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of guilty of that one myself, because I thought maybe she wouldn't have enough experience, me not knowing that she was trained in like Israeli combat and stuff like that. She has the fighting experience and stuff. So also a lot of people were worried about her acting. I think her previous gig was Fast and the Furious, and it wasn't like she was knocking out of the park there. But that was just one of the concerns people had beforehand. Another one was the way the other DC movies had been received, and even whether or not Zack Snyder's influence would be felt in this movie, because those were all concerns a lot of people had before this movie came out. I mean, you look at, Suicide Squad, Man of Steel wasn't that favorably received, and then Batman vs Superman was just like the shits. I mean, some people liked it, but critically this movie was not well received. So Wonder Woman came in as a huge underdog, and I think even as word of mouth started getting around, and then the movie came out, and even after reviews were coming in about the movie where people were like, no, this movie's good, this movie's actually really good, some people still thought this movie was overhyped, and I kind of fell into that scene as well, where I thought like, okay, maybe people are they want this movie to be so good that they're overhyping it. And then I went to actually go see the movie, and not gonna lie, I'm probably in the rare group that really got nothing from Gal Gadot's performance in Batman vs Superman. To me, I mean, she wasn't terrible in it, but there was nothing inspiring from what she did in it, at least for me. So going into Wonder Woman, I had really low expectation, but after seeing it, I don't know what got better for her as well, but she nails the whole feel of Wonder Woman from the beginning, where you kind of feel her vulnerability and confusion at the way the world is around her. Like when she first enters the Earth realm and stuff like that, she's always like confused. She's trying to put this air of like confidence, but there's a confusion behind her eyes too. She's kind of like vulnerable, but she can't show it as well either. And then you get to see like her strength, and that comes out through a lot of the times when she's fighting too, especially, but that just in scenes where she's walking across the battlefield like to kick some ass. That's probably one of the most better scenes in the movie. Or when she's like flying at that goddamn church when she was freaking catapulted by her guys and stuff. I thought that was really awesome. As ridiculous as the scene was, it made her look badass, and that's what you want for your superhero. So I was like, maybe Patty Jenkins just understands this character more. She understands this material more. Maybe Gal Gadot, like, she understood the character much more. But whatever happened between Batman vs Superman and Wonder Woman, in my opinion, I think it works out much more better. Chris Pine, I'll give him credit because he fits into that whole sidekick role really well. He just blends into it and stuff, and he does a good job of being the kind of like the exposition for Wonder Woman, explaining how things are in the world and what's happening in the world right now as far as the war that's happening and everything like that. And she has to like insert herself in it. They have some pretty good banter, though I wasn't a fan of the romance for the sake of romance, but at least it doesn't feel as forced in this movie. So it didn't really take nothing out of it for me. And same thing I'd say with the ending. Wasn't the best part of the movie either, as far as like what she has to do in the ending. But again, it's kind of like the last maybe 10 or 15 minutes of a movie that beforehand was already really well done, that it doesn't take away anything else from the movie. So I have no problems with it. And honestly, if it's just like, if you don't care about another fight scene kind of a movie, then the ending won't do anything for you either. Overall, I think this movie deserves all the praise it's getting from everyone. I think she's single-handedly the only interesting character to me in the DCEU as of right now, and it's gonna be interesting to see how this all goes forward, because I think it'll be on her shoulders that this universe might have a chance to survive, if it even wants to do that. But I think it should be all based around her, and that is my pick for number 2, Wonder Woman. And finally, we have the number one movie for 2017, or my number one movie for 2017. It's gonna be Get Out. No, not Get Out of the video. I mean Get Out the movie, starring Daniel Kaluuya, Allison Williams, Catherine Keener, and was directed by Jordan Peele. Drawing 99% on Rotten Tomatoes, Get Out. You have movies that I think every couple years or every generation where it has a social and a cultural impact for years to come. And I don't think I'd be crazy to say that Get Out is this movie for this generation. To say that this movie is just good is like saying ice cream is just good or sex is just good. If it's just good to you, then you're not getting it, right? I mean, that's all I gotta say about that. But seriously, this movie does so much so well that it's crazy to even believe that the person who wrote and directed this used to be on Mad TV. I wasn't a fan of Mad TV, and I wasn't even a fan of Jordan Peele when he was on Mad TV. But I gotta give him props for this movie because this was like so well done. It is up there in the stratosphere as one of the best movies. It puts itself also into so many categories like horror, dark comedy, drama, and like social that, and does a good job of not like muddying itself up as so many other movies have done when they try to tackle more than one genre at once. The reason I think it works so well for this movie is because it does so many things subtly. There aren't many scenes where things are thrown at your face and spelled out for you, like the viewer. The dialogue, the characters, the scenes are all done with this kind of ambiguous feeling that it makes you wonder, wait, what does that mean? Or, wait, does he mean this when he says that? And the movie doesn't answer those questions for you. It kind of just leaves it for you to interpret it however you want to interpret it. And I think that is what makes a good movie. When it doesn't have to throw the answer in your face, and if you watch the movie again or if you watch it on repeat viewings, you can kind of pick up what the answers are. Or you make up what your own answers are. I think another part where the movie excels at is this quiet tension it has. And it does it so well. There is some like underlying horror that you can't quite call out at first because again, it's so subtle, but yet so real that if you have ever been in that situation, then you can kind of understand like the main character, his hesitation and like fear in those scenes. Speaking of the actors, each actor I think does the characters justice. From like Catherine Keener, who has this like quiet, gentle horror to her, which it's weird coming from her because she usually plays so much like these warm characters and stuff like that. As far as the stuff that I've seen, that is kind of weird to see her in this like really gentle terror role she has going on here. You have Bradley Whitford, who plays this real, very, very real feeling, like accepting father role. And you kind of like, he's coming on really strong, and you're kind of like, okay, like, you know, take it back a minute here. You don't know what he's up to and stuff like that. So that's cool. Allison Williams plays her role really well as well. And one scene especially where like she's just like, she's acting so concerned, but her face is just completely dead, that you kind of wonder how you can say that without any emotion, any kind of emotion and stuff like that. It's crazy. And she plays that really well. Like, considering like from her character in Girls to being here, that's quite a change for her. But I gotta say the biggest praise is gotta go to Daniel Kaluuya, who plays Chris in this movie. Because he has to portray kind of all of us. He has to kind of portray the audience in a sense. As far as his confusion goes, his hesitation, his fear, as he starts that experience of not only like meeting his girlfriend's parents, but meeting his girlfriend's parents while black and she's white, and being in an environment that he clearly isn't comfortable with, like at first, but he can't exactly blame anything yet. Like, it's a situation that I think a lot of us have dealt with, where something doesn't exactly feel right. We can't put our finger on it, and we can't really blame anyone yet on it. And the gaslighting feel, it's like kind of like you're being gaslighted without anybody actually saying anything to you. And he conveys that, I think, really well with like his facial expressions and like his hesitations and stuff like that. I give him props for that, because it's not an easy thing to try to convey without, you know, people throwing it in your face and stuff like that, and he wasn't. I think he does all this to perfection, and in my opinion, he should get a lot more credit for his work in this movie, if he hasn't already. There are just so many things at play in this movie that makes it really well done. And I mean, I know I'm not the only one, because so many other people have seen it, and so many people have agreed that this movie is one of the better movies, not only for the year, but for much more than that. Overall, Get Out to me is number one because it excels at everything this movie wants to do. The mixing of genres, the message it's sending, the dialogue, the acting, the writing, to me makes it a damn near perfect movie. Not only, like I said, for this year, but for this generation. I think you can watch this movie in 5 or 10 years and it'll still be as good and it'll still hold up because of the message it's sending and the topics and the dialogue it's talking about. But that's gonna do it for me. That'll be my number one, is Get Out. Well, those are my top 5 movies for 2017. Like I said, I know you guys may have different opinions and picks, but these are mine. So let me know in the comments, what are your top 5 movies for 2017, and whether or not you even agree with my picks or if I'm just completely way off. This has been BiTWXan's, representing the Ichiban Gamer Club. Later. Peace.